Welcome to Nature Calls, Conversations from the Hudson Valley. Our team's goal is to present science-based information about gardening and all things nature in New York's Hudson Valley. Hosts Jean and Tim, along with team members Teresa and Linda, are master gardener volunteers for New York's Columbia and Greene counties. So if you're interested in gardening or nature, or nuggets of information about what's happening outside your door, settle in. Enjoy the conversation. Whatever the season, we have something to say.
Hi, I'm Tim Kennelty.
And I'm Jean Thomas.
And welcome to Nature Calls, Conversations from the Hudson Valley. Hey, we've got a great show today, don't we, Jean?
We have. We're starting out with one of Teresa's specialties.
Yeah, tomatoes. Tomatoes. Everybody loves tomatoes, right?
Teresa claims she can get 10 to 15 pounds per plant.
I could never get that much.
Well, she does, and she cooks them all.
You know, but she talks about some really important things, like you need to choose the variety of tomato based on how you want to use the tomatoes, for fresh eating or for salads or for sauces, and she gives a lot of information on that.
And then we hear from Linda.
Yeah, Linda, Hum of the Hive. I love Hum of the Hive.
Linda's talking about dearth today.
That's a little depressing, right? When there's not enough pollen, what do the bees do? They kind of turn on each other.
Oh, it's not Darth Vader?
No, it is a movie, but I think it's a horror movie about the bees. Really, really interesting stuff. Can't wait.
Hungry bees. That's terrible.
And Heidi Bock is back, trekking the trails. Where is Heidi today?
Heidi's at High Falls Conservation Area in Philmont in Columbia County.
I don't know if you've ever been there. It's a beautiful, beautiful place. Just amazing, majestic waterfall.
The highest in the county, I hear.
It is. And it's a 47-acre conservation area. Beautiful place, waterfall, and she talks about a really specific habitat there.
With ferns and sedges, which makes sense because they're around a waterfall.
Yeah, it's this kind of rocky area, and it attracts all kinds of butterflies and salamanders and snakes. And I know you want to go there for some snakes there, right?
Salamanders.
Yeah, salamanders. So this is a great show. I can't wait.
Come on, let's go listen.
You're listening to Nature Calls, Conversations from the Hudson Valley. Stay tuned for the Veggie Patch.
Now it's time for the Veggie Patch. This is Teresa Golden, a Master Gardener Volunteer from Cornell Cooperative Extension of Columbia and Greene counties. And today we'll talk about tomatoes. One of the most common and beloved vegetable crops for gardeners, tomatoes require relatively little space, yet can yield 10 to 15 pounds of fruit per plant. There are so many varieties available today. So how does one choose? Let's start with some basics. Determinate tomato plants grow to a certain height and then stop. They flower and set their fruit within a relatively short period of time. Indeterminate tomatoes continue to grow, flower, and set fruit until frost or disease kills them. These vines continue to grow throughout the season, so these varieties should be staked, caged, or pruned. The tomato fruit is 95% water, with the flavor determined by free sugars and acids, texture, and growing conditions. Select varieties have been bred to grow well in our regions. Think about how you will use a tomato. Are you looking for a large fruit for slicing, medium-sized fruit to chop into salads and salsas, smaller fruit for lunch boxes, tomatoes for canning or juicing or drying? Also consider resistance to diseases, especially ones that are common in your area. Many gardeners don't raise their own tomatoes from seed and may be limited to those varieties offered by local garden centers. Read label descriptions and talk to fellow gardeners about which tomato varieties they prefer and why. One option might be to try 2 or 3 plants of a different tomato variety each year just for fun or experimentation. Tomatoes are well adapted to a range of soil types, but the soil pH should be in the 6.2 to 6.8 range, so make sure you get your soil tested. Because of their long growing season and temperature requirements, tomatoes tend to be started indoors 6 to 8 weeks before being moved permanently into the garden. When purchasing tomato seedlings, select stocky plants with thick, straight stems and bright green leaves. The ideal transplant is 6 to 10 inches tall, as broad as it is high. Avoid tall and lanky plants or large, well-established plants with flowers or fruits already visible. Tomato plants will flourish in well-drained sites that receive full sun for most of the day. Whether your plants are purchased or homegrown, harden off tomato seedlings before transplanting them into the garden. About 10 days before transplanting, set plants outside for a few hours each day to gradually acclimate them to outdoor conditions. Start by setting plants in filtered light in a setting protected from strong breezes. Each day, prolong the period the tomato seedlings spend outdoors, exposing them gradually to direct sunlight and wind. Remember that seedlings lose water much more rapidly outdoors than inside and will need more frequent watering during the hardening off process. Bring plants indoors at night and on days when temperatures fall below 60 degrees Fahrenheit. Once the danger of frost has passed and soil temperatures have warmed to about 60 degrees Fahrenheit, you can plant your tomatoes into the garden. Around the Hudson Valley, this typically means waiting until around Memorial Day. The ideal spacing for tomato plants depends on the growth habit of the variety and whether the plants will be pruned. For staked or caged plants, 18 to 24 inches between plants should suffice. But if you don't stake them, allow 12 to 24 inches between determinate plants or 2 to 3 feet for indeterminate ones. When planting, dig a hole about twice the side of the tomato seedling and its root ball, setting the seedlings into the ground at the same level as it grew in the container. Please don't add Epsom salts to the soil unless soil testing shows a magnesium deficiency. Make sure to cover the root ball entirely. Set tomato plants in the ground so that only 2 to 3 sets of true leaves are exposed. Horizontal planting is an effective way to make plants stronger, especially leggy ones. Avoid setting the root ball deeply into cold soil. To reduce transplant shock, make sure to water them. If you plan to use stakes or cages, install them at planting time rather than late when the plant roots are visible. Where space is limited, tomatoes may be grown in containers. Although any large container will work if it provides adequate drainage, a general recommendation is to plant 1 tomato plant per 4 or 5 gallon container. Pay special attention to water and fertilizer needs, as container-grown tomato plants have no access to the deep soil reservoir of water and nutrients. Make sure your tomatoes get about an inch of water each week, either through rainfall or watering. Make sure to water the ground, not the leaves. Watering in the morning is preferable, so the water can be absorbed during the day, as tomatoes tend not to like wet feet. An even moisture supply throughout the time the fruit is developing helps prevent a condition called blossom end rot, as well as to supply the water needed to develop the fruit. Too much water at any one time may cause ripening fruit to split. Pruning or selectively removing some of the tomato plant growth can improve airflow, enhance yields, and prolong the harvest season. It can also help reduce some disease problems. The ideal pruning system depends on whether the tomato is a determinate or an indeterminate variety. Mulching the base of the tomato plant helps to reduce soil moisture, raise soil temperatures during the early part of the season, suppress weeds, and help stabilize soil temperatures throughout the summer. Tomatoes can be mulched with a thick organic mulch of straw, pine needles, leaves, and spread 2 to 4 inches deep around the plants. Because organic matter delays soil warming, wait until the soil is thoroughly warm before applying these mulches. The ultimate growth condition for tomatoes is a mean daily temperature of 70 to 75 degrees. Growth stops below 50 degrees. Flowers and fruit may drop when day temperatures exceed 90 degrees and night temperatures are greater than 75. Some gardeners use high tunnels to keep the plants under cover and thus keep the leaves dry, which reduces diseases that are very common problems, such as early blight and septoria leaf spot. Growing tomatoes under cover can also increase crop yields and quality while allowing you to work in the crop in inclement weather. Common insect pests on tomatoes include Colorado potato beetle, potato aphids, and stink bugs. Colorado potato beetle adults and larvae feed on leaves, stems, and fruit. Using floating row covers can help protect new transplants from this insect during their first 2 or 3 weeks of growth. Cutworms are soil-dwelling caterpillars that feed on stems at or just below the soil level, essentially cutting off the transplants at the base. If this is a problem in your garden, this damage can be prevented using a protective collar around each newly set transplant. Potato aphids cause damage by sucking plant juices and excreting a sticky honeydew, resulting in blemishes or cloudy spots on the surface of tomatoes and shallow corky areas in the flesh. Hornworms are a very large green caterpillar that blend in with plants and feed on the foliage, sometimes the fruit of the tomatoes. They can be easily managed by hand removal. Anthracnose, septoria leaf spot, early blight, and late blight are all fungal diseases of tomatoes. The fungi that cause septoria leaf spot and early blight overwinter on plant debris in the soil. Both are common causes of spots on tomato leaves, with symptoms usually beginning on the lower leaves. Septoria leaf spot is usually more severe because it can eventually cause the plants to be defoliated. Late blight does not overwinter in our soils and arrives via storms each year, usually late in the season. Although it does not cause leaf spots, it does blight leaves, stems, and fruit and kill plants very quickly. If you suspect fungal diseases are affecting your tomato crop, it's important to identify the disease to manage the disease effectively. Your local cooperative extension office can help to identify problems, rotating your crops, providing good air circulation, removing fallen leaves and fruit debris, mulching, and properly cleaning garden tools and supports can help to minimize these diseases. Assuming you've successfully managed these various pests and diseases, tomatoes can be harvested primarily between the pink and ripe stages. Light is not necessary to complete the ripening process, but don't store them in the refrigerator. Rather, allow them to ripen fully indoors at room temperature. Enjoy watching your tomatoes grow and enjoy the delicious harvest. Thanks for listening to the Veggie Patch. Until next time, nature calls.
You're listening to Nature Calls, conversations from the Hudson Valley. Stay tuned for Hum of the Hive.
Welcome back to the Hum of the Hive, a recurring segment of Nature Calls that follows the honeybee through the 4 seasons. I'm your host, Linda Aydlett, a Master Gardener Volunteer with Cornell Cooperative Extension of Columbia and Greene Counties, and a Cornell University Master Beekeeper. Many of our listeners may be aware that here in the Northeast and many other parts of the country have been experiencing a severe shortage of rainfall the past few months. Everything is crispy and turned brown, including critical food resources needed for a colony of honeybees to thrive. In short, we've moved into what beekeepers call a dearth, defined as a shortage of nectar and pollen-producing flowers, and lack of sufficient food resources can have a profound effect on honeybee colonies, depending on how long a dearth lasts. While the Northeast typically goes through a seasonal dearth each year in the hot months of July and August, the severe lack of rain in early summer has magnified the effects this season. Signs of a dearth that you might see in your own garden would be a more than usual number of foragers flitting from blossom to blossom, but not stopping very long because the nectar's dried up. They're investigating every small opportunity, looking for every drop of nectar. Hummingbird feeders that were previously passed over are now attracting clusters of bees. You might also find small clusters of bees gathering at dripping faucets and leaks in hoses, trying to collect water to take back to the colony for ventilation and to dilute their thick, viscous honey stores. If prior months have been productive forage-wise, a colony has enough stores of honey and pollen to feed adults and brood alike until resources become plentiful again. However, when stores get critically low, sacrifices have to be made, some of which may be especially harsh but are absolutely necessary to ensure the survival of the colony. Perhaps the first to feel the repercussions are the drones, or the male honeybees. While drones play a critical role in reproduction, they really don't contribute to foraging, nursing, or any other useful task within the hive. So they are expendable in times of short food supplies and simply are blocked by guard bees from returning inside the hive, the only place where they can be fed. They end up starving to death. But to the colony, it's fewer mouths to feed, and drones aren't needed this late in the season. Even if there wasn't a dearth, drones would be forced out in late fall anyway, not allowed to stay through winter, for pretty much the same reasons. But drones only make up about 10% of a colony's population, and probably even less this late in the season. While kicking out drones may help with metering out nectar stores, other measures must be taken to help support larvae who require protein to survive. The queen may cease laying eggs, which helps reduce the need for additional protein resources, but this still may not be enough to support the current population of larvae, so they look to another means. Since brood is primarily fed protein, they themselves are a source high in protein, and researchers have found that colonies will more often terminate brood rearing rather than produce malnourished larvae. So when pollen reserves are depleted, the colony collectively assesses whether some of the brood are expendable. Maybe you can see where I'm going here. By expendable, I mean used as a food source. That is, cannibalized. Drone brood would be the first to be cannibalized. But as the dearth persists, younger worker brood would also be cannibalized and fed to the older brood. If a dearth lasts too long, the colony's population can be significantly reduced and it won't survive winter. In times of dearth, another behavior escalates dramatically: robbing. Honeybees are quite adept at detecting the sweet smell of honey and are not shy in trying to steal some from neighboring colonies. And if the targeted colony is weak, robbing bees from a stronger colony can overwhelm guard bees and wipe out a colony's stores in a matter of hours. Defending bees will fight to stave off the invaders, but are often killed by the sheer numbers of robbing bees that descend for the trove of food. Yellow jackets, bald-faced hornets, and other insect predators will often descend as well. But not for the honey stores. Instead, they're looking for the protein-rich brood they can feed their own young. A colony that was robbed in this manner is doomed. There simply isn't enough time or population remaining to make up the 90 pounds or more of honey needed to get through our northeast winters. Remember, a forager only collects 1/12 of a teaspoon of honey in her entire lifetime. It takes tens of thousands of bees several months or more to accomplish that feat, and that's in a good flow. It's important to note that lack of rain and extreme heat aren't the only conditions that could trigger a dearth. Just the opposite could have a similar effect as experienced a couple weeks after Hurricane Irene came through our area in August 2011. Irene dumped huge amounts of rain and was followed by almost 2 weeks of overcast, cool days with little sunshine, and very little or no nectar or pollen. Hopefully this extended dearth period will break soon, and foragers will be able to make up for any losses from the fall nectar flow gathered from asters and goldenrod blossoms, so that the colony builds up stores to make it through to next spring. And it's not just honeybees that must survive these periods of dearth. Native bees, butterflies, moths, and other pollinators and beneficial insects are affected as well. It remains to be seen if extended dearths will become more prevalent with the changes in climate we're experiencing lately. You can help mitigate the effects by planting drought-tolerant native plants, shrubs, and trees, especially late-flowering natives. We'll provide resources on our website to help you choose which would thrive best for your location. And so we've come to the end of today's Hum of the Hive. Thanks for listening.
You're listening to Nature Calls, conversations from the Hudson Valley. Stay tuned for Trekking the Trails,
Welcome back to Trekking the Trails. I'm Heidi Bock, Director of Land Stewardship and Community Partnerships with the Columbia Land Conservancy. And this month, we'll be visiting High Falls Conservation Area, a 47-acre property on Roxbury Road, just outside the village of Philmont, home to the highest waterfall in Columbia County. This site has a little over 1 mile of forested trails. For this trek, we're going to take a stroll back in time, and we'll be on the lookout for interesting geologic and historic features. After crossing the Big Bridge, head to the right along Waterfall Way, which is a narrow, forested trail of packed earth that meanders up to an overlook. As you walk along the path, you may notice amidst the ferns and other vegetation, a natural jumble of loose rocks at the base of a much larger rock. This is called ledge and talus. It is a unique habitat that supports diverse community of plants and animals. Taluses occur when rocks that have fallen from a larger cliff or ledge above form a slope of rock and fragments. Many rare sedges, ferns, and wildflowers can occur in amongst the rocks, creating an interesting natural habitat that can support butterflies, snakes, and salamanders. As you continue on the trail and approach the overlook, you will likely hear the falls before you see it. From the top, you will see an impressive 150-foot waterfall flowing over a rocky outcropping. The falls is formed by the Agawamuck Creek, which means Creek of Many Fishes in the Mohican language. The falls and creek have long been an important part of Philmont's history and development. In the early 19th century, hydropower was the chief source of energy for many factories that lined the creek above the falls. In 1845, a dam was built to power the mills. This led to the growth of the bustling village. This view from the overlook leaves no doubt as to why High Falls is the symbol chosen to represent the village of Philmont. For more than 30 years, the Columbia Land Conservancy has worked to inspire our community to more deeply connect with, respect, and protect the natural world. We collaborate with partners and volunteers to improve the health of the land, ensure a thriving farm economy, create environmental education opportunities, provide access to outdoor experiences, and support municipal leaders in conservation-minded decision-making. To learn more, visit clctrust.org or find us on Facebook and Instagram.
That concludes another episode of Nature Calls, Conversations from the Hudson Valley. We would like to thank Sandra Linnell and Devin Connolly from Cornell Cooperative Extension of Columbia and Greene Counties for production support. And a special thank you to our listeners for joining us on this episode of Nature Calls, Conversations from the Hudson Valley. You can find links to any of the topics mentioned in this episode at our website at ccecolumbiagreen.org. Comments and suggestions for future topics may be directed to us at columbiagreenmgb@cornell.edu or on the CCE Master Gardener Volunteers of Columbia and Greene Counties Facebook page. For more information about Cornell Cooperative Extension of Columbia and Greene Counties, visit our website at ccecolumbiagreen.org or visit us in Hudson or in Acra. Cornell Cooperative Extension provides equal programming and employment opportunities